Doing today, it's your boy JJ Nomination, and today we're going to be playing a little fun mini game here with the 2019 NFL Draft Class. We're going to be grading them, but we're not going to be handing out letter grades, you know, like your A minuses, your D pluses. We're not going to be doing any of that. We're going to be doing thumbs up, thumbs down, or incomplete 2019 NFL Draft Edition. We're going to start with Kyler Murray and end off with N'Keal Harry, who was the 32nd pick in the first round of the 2019 class. So let's just go ahead and start off with Kyler Murray. This is an easy one, thumbs up. I think the Cardinals just found their franchise quarterback. To me, he's going to have a really good year too, especially with them adding DeAndre Hopkins. But based on what we saw in his rookie year, obviously, he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. You can agree to disagree on whether or not he should have won it, but he had a pretty damn good rookie year for rookie quarterbacks in general, and I do have to give him that. He made the most out of a bad situation. You know, the offensive line is still in shambles. The weapons were unproven, young, and just non-existent at times outside of Larry Fitzgerald. It took them several weeks to have a consistent run game with Kenyon Drake mixed in with a splash of Chase Edmonds early on in the year. The defense isn't particularly great, but Kyler Murray gets a thumbs up for sure. Now we move on to the San Francisco 49ers, who selected Nick Bosa, and this one is going to be pretty easy. Thumbs up. Nick Bosa was arguably one of the best defensive players in football, nonetheless for a rookie. He won the Defensive Rookie of the Year award, and honestly, you could have put him top 3, top 5 in voting for Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good he was. That's how impactful he was for the 49ers. And the thing is, they have a stacked defensive line, and he was the standout guy as a rookie. So to me, that just tells you what kind of player you have here in Nick Bosa. Easily a thumbs up for what he has done this year. And oh, by the way, outside of Zadarius Smith for the Packers, he is the only player outside of Zadarius Smith to have 90-plus pressures this year on the quarterback. So for a rookie, or for any player for that matter, that is just really impressive. Now we're going to go to the defensive line here for the New York Jets, and what is he listed as? Okay, a right end and then a 3-4. Quinnen Williams right here, the number 3 overall pick. I'm going to give this a thumbs up. He's been a pretty solid player. He hasn't quite been the player that people might expect him to be, but hey, he's playing in a 3-4 rookie year. He's been pretty solid. I got to give him that. I don't think it would be an incomplete grade because we've seen him play a lot of football, and I don't think it's a thumbs down because when we have seen him play, he hasn't been terrible. He hasn't really shown the signs of being a bust. You know, he's been pretty solid out there, so I give him a thumbs up. When it comes to the Raiders and Clelin Ferrell, I just had him. I'm going to give this a thumbs down. He really didn't play that well, in my opinion. I thought he would be pretty solid. He hasn't looked like it out there. Max Crosby, who was a 4th-round pick, has outproduced him. And Clelin Ferrell, while he's a nice, solid player, he's not like a number 4 overall pick. Even at the time when we saw him go number 4 overall to the Raiders, a lot of people were confused, including myself. You know, they said they were going to shock everyone in that draft, and they did, because they took Clelin Ferrell, who I thought would be drafted somewhere in the middle of the draft, like in the first round or somewhere in the 20s. This guy went number 4. Kind of surprised, man, but I have to give it a thumbs down for now. Of course, he's got time to turn it around. And by the way, these grades are for right now. I'm not saying Clelin Ferrell's going to suck. I'm not saying Kyler Murray's going to be the best ever. You know, these are just right now, based on what we know about these players. And to me, that's the fun part of doing it. Now we go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man. The first middle linebacker drafted since the 90s in the top 5. And that's Devin White. This one gets a thumbs up for me. Looking very good in Todd Bowles' defense. It took him a little bit to get on track. So did the entire defense for Tampa Bay. It took them a while to really get going. But once they did, man, they found their stride around the middle to later part of the season. And they looked really good. They looked like a top 10 defense towards the end of the year. And they deserve a lot of credit for that. So I'm going to give the Devin White a thumbs up for sure. Now we get to the New York Giants, man, and they took Daniel Jones, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give it a thumbs up because even though it was ridiculous at the time for him to be the number 6 overall pick, he exceeded a lot of people's expectations. The fumbling is definitely a concern. I would say for the most part, he does make pretty solid decisions. He has thrown a couple of bad interceptions. A lot of rookies are going to do that, but for the most part, his decision making isn't bad. He's better than I thought he was going to be. And I love the fact that he does have some mobility in his game. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up, a surprising thumbs up. And now we get to the number 7 overall pick. The Jacksonville Jaguars selected Josh Allen. And I'm going to give this a thumbs up. Josh Allen had a pretty good rookie season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The second year in a row that a player named Josh Allen, was selected number 7 overall. Last year, of course, or the previous draft, it was Josh Allen, the quarterback for the Bills. This time it's Josh Allen, the edge rusher for Jacksonville. He's getting a thumbs up. He's looking like he's going to be a pretty good player in this league. And for Jacksonville, in a rotational type of role, you know, he looked pretty damn good. And he did play a lot. It wasn't like he just rotated on third downs only. He played a lot of the snaps. He played a lot of the games. And he was pretty damn good in that role. So definitely getting a thumbs up. How about TJ Hawkinson, the tight end for the Detroit Lions? I'm going to have to give this one an incomplete. He's been dealing with injuries, and he hasn't really played a whole lot, to be honest. Like, he got hurt, I think, on the Thanksgiving game. He had one really, really great game against the Arizona Cardinals where he caught like 7 balls for 120 yards or something. He had a crazy week 1 game, but after that, man, really hasn't shown a whole lot, but the upside is still there. He has that complete ability. I think it's just Detroit not knowing how to use tight ends. I don't really know what it is. He's a good player. You obviously can see it when he does get utilized, but I'm going to have to give it an incomplete. Injuries and just not really, finding, carving out a role with this offense in Detroit. Now we're going to go to the number 9 overall pick, and that was Ed Oliver at defensive tackle. In my opinion, great value right here. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. He hasn't quite flashed as well as I thought and many others thought he would, but he's been pretty solid to start off his career. And Ed Oliver's looking like he's going to be a good player. No Shaq Lawson, but you do have a lot of talent coming in. Quentin Jefferson, Vernon Butler. You still have Jerry Hughes here for another year. I think Ed Oliver takes a huge leap in year 2. We'll see what he can do, but for now, he's definitely getting a thumbs up. He's been a solid player. Now we move on to the number 10 overall pick from this past draft. It was a trade up from Pittsburgh to come up here with Denver. Denver ended up going down 10 spots. The Steelers get Devin Bush right here, and I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I thought him and Vince Williams were a solid duo this year, and this Pittsburgh defense was really good. You look at TJ Watt, Micah Fitzpatrick, Bud Dupree had a pretty good year as well. Like, this defense was pretty solid, throughout the entire year. They were one of the best, better defenses, especially when it came to takeaways and, sack production and all of that. And Devin Bush, hey, he played a huge part in that as well. He was a pretty damn good pick for them. So for that, I have to give him the thumbs up. He played pretty well. Now we move on to the Cincinnati Bengals, who drafted an offensive tackle by the name of Jonah Williams. I'm going to have to give this an incomplete. I'm going to give this an incomplete. He hasn't played at all in his rookie year. He went down with an injury. And this was a player that people mocked to the Green Bay Packers. I honestly thought we were going to get him. I'm not going to lie, because, with Brian Bulaga, getting older in the final year of his contract, I thought it would be a good idea to start looking towards the future. Apparently, if you pitch that idea to Packer fans, they're not going to like it. But if you go strictly, it's okay to fill in your needs, but if you go strictly based on needs, that's a good way to get fired. Sometimes you just have to get talent and start thinking about the future as well. But with Jonah Williams right here, obviously the Bengals did the right thing. They got an offensive lineman. He just happened to go down. We'll see what he does next year with Joe Burrow, who we all assume is going to be the number 1 overall pick. Essentially, you're getting 2 first-round picks next year, or this upcoming season in 2020, but it's getting an incomplete for 2019 because he didn't play. Now we move on to the Green Bay Packers, who at number 12 overall selected, what is he listed as? The left outside linebacker, Rashawn Gary. I'm going to give this an incomplete. Depending on who you ask, he's either getting a thumbs up or thumbs down from Packer fans, but I'm giving it an incomplete because he played a limited role on this defense with Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith coming over. He played a limited role. They already signed their pass rushers, so Rashawn had to fight for his snaps early. And then he's wearing the coveted number 52 that Clay Matthews wore and it insulted a lot of people. It is what it is, man. I mean, you can't retire everyone's jersey, but I get it. Clay Matthews, a big deal for the Green Bay Packers. I get it. I'm a Packer fan. I understand. But Rashawn Gary gets an incomplete. He did flash at times, but then there were times where like he was hurt, battling nagging injuries, didn't really look like he was doing much out there. And then there were times where he flashed and he looked like he fit right in. He looked like he was right at home with the Packers, but he didn't play as much, so I have to give it an incomplete. You know, I think year 2 is going to be big for him. He's definitely going to have to take a step up for this team, and we'll see if he does. And then at number 13 overall, we have the Miami Dolphins. They selected, what is he listed as? Christian Wilkins, who is a 3-4 defensive end, can play defensive tackle in the 4-3. I'm going to give this a thumbs down. You know, I really didn't notice him out there like that when watching the Miami Dolphins. And trust me, I did watch a good bit of Dolphins games. They were talked about all the time on my weekly recaps for these random players that they picked up off the street and made into solid players. But Wilkins gets a thumbs down. He really didn't have a big impact on the defensive line. And they were one of the weaker units on the defensive line with a first-round pick that they invested in. So for me, gotta be honest, not the greatest selection right there, but maybe in year 2 and year 3 you start to see him pick it up. Now we move on to the Atlanta Falcons, who took an offensive guard, Chris Lindstrom, out of Boston College. I really loved the pick at the time, but I'm gonna have to give it an incomplete. He hasn't played a whole lot. I mean, he has, but again, another one of those players who dealt with injuries, missed a lot of time. But he had looked solid when he was out there, but I have to give him an incomplete. He hasn't really played as much. The offensive line in general for the Falcons dealt with a lot of injuries, but I think Chris Lindstrom, I think you got a good player there at Atlanta. I think he's going to be a pretty good guard in this league. And listen, his tape doesn't lie. He was one of the more impressive interior offensive linemen in the class for a reason, and there's a reason he was the first one taken. The tape was really good from him. And I think you got something there in Chris Lindstrom, Falcons fans. Just make sure he's got to stay healthy. But yeah, I think he's got a good future. Just, hey, got to stay healthy. And then at 15 overall, the Washington Redskins selected Dwayne Haskins at quarterback. And I'm going to give this an incomplete because, you know, he really didn't play a whole lot. And when he did, he was kind of up and down, kind of sus at times as well. I'm going to give him an incomplete. You know, he hasn't even played 10 games, I don't think. I think he's played like 8 or 9, and he's been all over the place. I think he needs a full year to really see what he can do, and I think year 2 is going to be huge. Of course, you hear all the smoke screen rumors, oh, they're going to draft Tua to come in here and compete. And this team did trade for Kyle Allen. What that tells me is they view Haskins as the number 1 guy because Kyle Allen is not coming in here to take his job. You know, like, we've seen that experiment already in Carolina. He's just not that good. I don't know what to tell you. But for Haskins, he's getting an incomplete. We need to see him play more. That's as simple as that. Now we go to the Carolina Panthers. They selected Brian Burns, one of my favorite picks in this draft that they made. We're going to give Brian Burns a big old thumbs up, man. He had to split snaps with Bruce Irvin early on in the year. But when he came in and played, he looked like the best pass rusher they had on the team by a mile. Brian Burns was that impactful. He did slow down a little bit towards the end of the year, but man, early on he was making a strong case with Nick Bosa for Defensive Player of the Year for rookies. So I gotta give him that, man. He's definitely gonna be a good player. He did put on some weight as well, so he can play the edge rusher position. I'm excited to see what he does in year 2 under the new coach Matt Rule. To me, that's going to be pretty exciting to see. Now we go to the New York Giants, who obviously got this pick via the Cleveland Browns and their Odell Beckham Jr. trade. There's the Giants right there. And they selected Dexter Lawrence, and I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Not the greatest value in the world because of how good their defensive line already was, with B.J. Hill, Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams, and even R.J. McIntosh. I know the overall in Madden doesn't look good, but he's still a pretty good defensive lineman in a 3-4 where all you got to do is really stop the run. But Dexter Lawrence as a player for the Giants gets a thumbs up. Not the best value in the world. I think they could have went in a different direction there, you know, because he's kind of a nose tackle. but he's proven that he's got a little pass rush upside. But I'm going to give him a thumbs up. He's been a solid player for the Giants, and just because his position isn't the most valuable doesn't mean you should knock the player, because he played well when he was out there. Let's see, who's the next player? Garrett Bradbury. From the Minnesota Vikings, he was their rookie center. A little all over the place, but I'm going to give him a thumbs up. Listen, zone run scheme, perfect fit, because that's what he did at NC State, and that's what he did here for Minnesota. He was a really good run blocker early on, but you could tell that he was getting overwhelmed by those bigger defensive tackles, especially in pass protection. If you look at both Green Bay games, Kenny Clark just abused this guy, and you're going to, I'm not a PFF guy, but 2 of his lowest graded games as a center and pass protection came against the Green Bay Packers. They overwhelmed this guy, and listen, as a rookie center, it's hard to come into the league as a rookie center. A lot of those guys end up playing guard, and you end up signing a veteran center to play next to him, to mentor him and stuff. You look at James Daniels for the Chicago Bears in 2018. He came out as a rookie center, and they put him at guard next to Cody White here. Now they're going to put James Daniels at center, I think, in year 3, and they did a little bit of that last year. They kind of rotated the two, so James Daniels can get that experience as a center, because eventually they're going to move him to center. So for Garrett Bradbury, a little bit of an up and down, but I'm going to give him a thumbs up, because in the running game, he was really good. And in pass protection, again, wasn't the greatest. He did have some good days. He did have some bad days. That's a part of being a rookie, especially at the center position. Now we go to 19 overall, and the Tennessee Titans drafted Jeffrey Simmons. I'm going to give Jeffrey Simmons an incomplete, but when he did play, he looked very good. But again, he tore his ACL before the draft. He did miss a lot of time, but when he did play, he looked very good. But I have to give him an incomplete. He hasn't played a whole lot, but again, a small sample size we saw. He looked very good. I'll give him that. Now we go to pick 20. The Broncos ended up trading down with the Pittsburgh Steelers to select Noah Fant. Now, if you look at this tight end room, they have a bunch of guys like Jeff Heuerman. I don't think he's here anymore, but he was solid at the time. Jake Butt's a pretty solid option. Troy Fumagalli is a pretty decent option. Andrew Beck, kind of like a wide receiver that put on weight pretty much. But Noah Fant, I'm giving a thumbs up to. He looked pretty good. It took him a while to get going, but he looked pretty good. He played with a lot of different quarterbacks this year, from Joe Flacco to Brandon Allen to Drew Lock. I'm pretty sure they played with another quarterback for a game or two, but all over the place in terms of the quarterbacks. But Noah Fant gets a thumbs up. He was pretty good. Took him a while to get going, though. Now we go to the Green Bay Packers again, who traded up with the Seattle Seahawks to make this selection. They got the pick originally from the Saints in 2018 for the Marcus Davenport trade, where the Packers got a future first, and then the 18th pick that they traded up for with Seattle again ended up turning into Jair Alexander. Right here, Darnell Savage was the pick, 21 overall. Big time thumbs up. Easily the best rookie safety from the class. I really liked Taylor Rapp, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Darnell Savage. Those were like the 3 guys I really liked. I liked Abram as well, but I wasn't really praising him like the other guys. Good pick for the Packers. At the time, I was a little shocked. I didn't expect Darnell Savage to be the first safety off the board. I figured it'd be Taylor Rapp or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, Chauncey went in like round 4, which was a little surprising. I thought he should have at least went in early round 2, late round 1, but whatever. The Saints stole a good player in the 4th round. But for the Packers, big old thumbs up for me. Let's see, the next pick, the Philadelphia Eagles, they ended up selecting Andre Dillard at left tackle. That's going to get an incomplete. He did come in and play. He did come in and play a little bit when Jason Peters went down. You know, he kind of filled in at different spots, guard and tackle. When guys went down with an injury, he looked all right. He did play a little bit. He looked like he was struggling a little bit with the strength of the NFL, like the strength of those players but at times he did look pretty good as well. He looked solid. He looked like a rock at left tackle. But to me, it's incomplete. I want to see him play a full season before I really make an assessment. Now we're going to go to the Houston Texans, who made a head-scratching pick, even though he's a good player. You know, Titus Howard. To me, I had Titus as a second-round pick, maybe an early third. But they selected him right here at pick 22 overall. Or 23 overall, excuse me. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. You know, a smaller school tackle from Alabama State, had experience at left tackle. I think he was like a tight end before that. He's been a pretty solid rookie tackle. I got to give it to him. I thought there were better tackles on the board, like Cody Ford, Jawan Taylor, but I do have to give him credit. Like, he looked pretty solid. So definitely going to give him that and give the Texans the benefit of the doubt because he looked solid. You know, I'll definitely give him that. And now we move on to the now Las Vegas Raiders for Josh Jacobs. You know, at the time, obviously, they were Oakland. Now they're Vegas. Josh Jacobs gets a big-time thumbs up right here. You can argue and debate all day. Do you take a running back in the first round? To me, if it's later in the first round like this, yes. Because you're getting an extra option, an extra year. With that fifth-year option, that's an extra year of a workload. And Josh Jacobs in college did not have that much of a workload. So he's going to last a little longer than other running backs from this class and other running backs like in the last couple of years. Because in college, he didn't have that much of a workload because he was there with like Damian Harris and Najee Harris. He was in a crowded backfield over there in Alabama. So, you know, now he's going to get the workload, and to me, he can last longer. He can get a second contract in the NFL because of the light workload he's had. Now we go to the Baltimore Ravens, and they selected Marquise Hollywood Brown. I'm going to give this a thumbs up. Leaning towards incomplete, but we've seen him play enough. And he's made a lot of big plays. Early on in the year, he was a big play receiver. I actually drafted him in fantasy football. I ended up flipping him for an injured Tyreek Hill at the time. Because when he had a big game, I sold him. I sold the value, got Tyreek Hill. I didn't win the finals, but I made it. And I reaped the benefits of having Tyreek Hill when he came back. But, you know, at that time early on in the year, Marquise Hollywood Brown was making big play after big play against all these teams. And he kind of slowed down a little bit, but then we saw in the playoffs, obviously, against the Titans, he was pretty good, even though they ended up losing. Marquise Hollywood Brown has definitely flashed big time when he's had a couple of games where he's gone quiet, but he's been a pretty solid player for the Ravens. Gonna give this a thumbs up. Now we go back to the Washington Redskins, who selected... what is he listed as? Right outside linebacker, Montez Sweat. They traded up with the Colts to get this pick. To me, we kept seeing Montez Sweat slip down the board. I honestly thought the player that would slip would be Rashawn Gary, but it ended up being Montez Sweat. He did have the heart thing, like the heart condition. Granted, it wasn't as serious as Maurice Hurst from the previous draft, but I'm gonna give this a... I don't know what to give Montez Sweat. I think I'll give him a thumbs up, but it's like a thumbs up that really should lean towards incomplete. But we've seen him play a good bit. He hasn't been the most productive, but he's been a solid player. I think year two, similar for a lot of other people who have shown flashes, will be really big. So we'll see. With Montez Sweat, now we go back to the Raiders, who selected Jonathan Abram at safety. You know, I did like Jonathan Abram, did not love him, but I liked him a lot. To say that he could have been an early second, ended up being a late first, that's fine. I don't really complain about that. I'm going to give him an incomplete. He didn't play his rookie year. Got robbed due to injury, but I'm excited to see what he does in year two. Simple as that. Now we go to the Los Angeles Chargers, and this was a pick that I had mocked for the Chargers for like months. And it's Jerry Tillery. I'm going to give it a thumbs down, though. When he did play, he wasn't really all that impressive. And he didn't really play as much as you'd like to see him play early on. Because this team obviously has like a bunch of veterans on the team. They got Brandon Mebane, Sylvester Williams, Damian Square played a good bit. Justin Jones was decent. Tillery kind of... was kind of all over the place. Like, he really didn't play that great. But hopefully in year 2, man, next to Linval Joseph, we can see what he does. But for now, it's getting a thumbs down. Now we go to the Seattle Seahawks. You know, every year they have to reach on somebody. It's a tradition. And they reached on LJ Collier, who to me was a 3rd to 4th round pick. A little bit closer to the 4th round grade. Kind of a late 3rd guy, basically. And they ended up getting him late 1st. I mean, this was their guy, so hey, I mean, if that's your guy, sure. But I'm going to give this an incomplete. He was a healthy scratch a good portion of the year. He didn't play as much, and when he did, he didn't really do a whole lot. So I'm going to have to give it an incomplete because he hasn't played a whole lot. It's kind of unfair to give him a thumbs down when he hasn't played a whole lot. He can't control that. Well, he kind of can, but you know, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. We're going to call it an incomplete. Now we're going back to the New York Giants. We're almost done. We got a few more. Going back to the New York Giants. They traded up, I forgot which Seattle. Seattle had the 30th pick as well that they flipped for Frank Clark to the Chiefs. So the Giants ended up trading up. They selected DeAndre Baker from Georgia. I'm going to give it a thumbs down, man. I'm a little disappointed because DeAndre Baker is a good corner, okay? But he did not play well in his rookie year. Maybe, again, he's a player, 2nd year, 3rd year, that ends up playing better. But, man, like, I've seen this dude play in person, right, at Georgia. I've seen him play a lot. And to me, he looked like a pretty good corner prospect. But you know, with the Giants, I guess it could be lack of pass rush as well, but he did not look as good either. But he did have some good moments, but I have to give it a thumbs down. Pretty disappointing year for him. We're going back to the Falcons here at 31 overall. They made a trade with the Rams to get Caleb McGarry. Again, I'm going to have to give it an incomplete. Injuries. And when he was out there, he was kind of meh. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't a fan of the Caleb McGarry pick. You know, and one of the first comments I made, because, you know, ESPN, they'll show a few pieces of tape, and the few pieces of tape that they showed really, I mean, outside of the one run play, it just wasn't that good. You know, there was a play where he looked super stiff in pass protection. He looked like if that guy was any stronger and knew how to use his leverage, he was going to bulldoze him. You know, and, you know, I just wasn't a fan. Like, I was asked by Falcons fans, like, what do you think of the pick? I'm like, I kind of don't like it, to be honest, but maybe he could be good. And that's kind of the same feeling I have. I really don't like the pick. I understand it's a need, but there were better options on the board. Juwan Taylor, Cody Ford, hell, even Greg Little. You know, there were better options available, and they went with Caleb McGarry. But again, similar to the Daniel Jones thing, if that's your guy, go get him. I'm not too mad about it, but it's going to get an incomplete due to injuries. And then, finally, the New England Patriots, they selected a wide receiver, N'Keal Harry. I'm going to give it an incomplete. A lot of people would be inclined to give it a thumbs down because he didn't help Mr. Tom Brady that much, but he missed a lot of time with an ankle injury. He was placed on IR. I don't think he should have been placed on IR. I didn't really think it was as serious as they made it out to be, but I'm not living in N'Keal Harry's body, so maybe it was a big deal. But he ended up missing a lot of time because of that, and when he did play, he had a couple of moments here and there, but then he had a few moments where he just could not get open. So I'm going to give him an incomplete. He hasn't really played a whole lot, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, man, those are my 2019, 2020, or not 2020. These are my 2019 like NFL draft grades. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or incomplete. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and peace out.